Sir, may I come in?
Yes, please do.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Please take your seat.
Thank you, sir.
You're Mr. Dilip K Kainikkara.
Yes, sir.
So, Dilip, will that be fine if I call you Dilip?
Yeah, Dilip is perfectly
Dilip
fine.
is fine. So, Dilip, are you vaccinated?
Yes, sir, I am.
Both dose?
Yeah, both.
And you're not having any symptoms right now?
No, sir, I don't have any symptoms.
The board is also vaccinated, so I'll advise you to remove your mask.
Thank you, sir.
Comfortable?
Yes, sir.
Fine, Dilip. Then please introduce yourself.
Sir, I am Dilip K Kainikkara. I am from Kottayam district of Kerala, which is also where I did my basic schooling. And then I pursued an undergraduate degree in electrical engineering from IIT Madras, upon completion of which I joined Samsung Electronics at its South Korea headquarters in a research profile in the mobile department. And in 2018, after around 2.5 years in that particular profile, I resigned and decided to pursue my civil service dreams. And I have also been mentoring some students. And last year, I qualified for Indian Forest Service, and I'm a probationer right now.
You have joined that?
I'm on EOL, sir, 1 year leave right now.
Okay, so you are already in all India service.
Yes, sir.
So, what are the service you are looking for in this exam?
Sir, I'm looking for IAS and IPS, Indian Administrative and Police Services.
Okay. So, tell me, you graduated from IIT Madras Electrical Engineering,
Yes, sir.
right? And you were in Korea, this is what you said.
Yes, sir.
So, what made you change your mind moving from corporate sector engineering background to a government service?
Sir, I was comfortable in corporate sector as well for pay as well as job satisfaction. But after around 2.5 years there, what I found is that I have been increasingly getting into this groove where I was getting disconnected from the reality of our masses. To take a simple example, I was working on the flagship phones of Samsung, the S series phones. But eventually, the fact is that those phones are not even marketed properly in India. India is seen as a middle class consumers, and they have a separate series for Indian customers. So I decided that rather than working in this elite group, my aptitude and skills may perhaps be put to use if I pursue a career which can make more of an impact at the grassroots level in India, sir.
You have taken mathematics as your optional.
Yes, sir.
Why not electrical engineering?
Sir, by 2018, when I joined the started preparation, it had been a few years since my electrical engineering graduation, and meanwhile I had been working in data science and machine learning capacities. So I felt mathematics would be a more suitable option for me since that's.
See, if I look at your application form and the details of your academics and all, it is very clearly written all over that you were a very good student as far as the academics are concerned.
Thank you,
right? Sir. It is also visible that that is the area you should excel rather than getting into, as we call, the jack of all trade kind of a service, which is basically, honestly speaking, for mediocres, not really academically bright people, because academically bright people have this tendency of knowing more and more about less and less, and we need people who need to know more and more about more and more. So do you believe that you have it in you as far as the civil services are concerned? Convince me.
Sir, it's true that the services are generalist to an extent, but if we look at the recent trends, we can see that there are a number of changes that are coming in. For instance, the government and the services as well, they are turning more into role-based competencies. Like for instance, if we look at the Karma Yogi program, which was initiated recently, they want to create a profile where civil servants who excel in a particular profile are rewarded. And also we are at a juncture where technology is making inroads into all services, whether it be IAS or IPS or even forest service. And I feel that as a person who has a background both academically as well as a working experience in the technological fields, a person like me could be of put to good use at this particular juncture in services, sir, is what I feel.
Mathematics is your optional, right?
Yes,
have you ever used abacus?
Sir, I have seen it. I mean, I'm aware how it works, but I have never used it for a real world application.
So which number system it uses? What will be the base of the number system which abacus use? It's not a decimal system for sure.
Sir,
which system is it?
Sir, it can use binary system, but it can also be adapted for decimal system, sir. That's what
it is. Can be adapted, but primarily it is designed for which number base?
Base 2?
No.
Sorry, sir, then I am not.
Okay, tell me, when we talk about the base of number systems, usually we talk about even bases. It's binary, it's decimal, it's hexadecimal, it's octal.
Yes, sir.
Why not the odd base systems?
Sir, the non-decimal systems, they primarily came into vogue because of the technological revolution, because of the computer age. And
binary predates decimal. There was 6-base system in Indus Valley civilization. There were several.
Sir, it definitely predates computer age, but its modern relevance largely comes from computers, is what I understand, sir. And in computers, essentially, when we get down to it, it's essentially we have like two states, on and off states. So that naturally adapts to the binary system. I mean, we may have quantum computers a decade down the line, but right now we are still working on like on and off states. So 2 and multiples of it is naturally what comes to programming, and we have essentially been building upon that ever since. So that may explain the popularity of multiples of 2 being popular bases, sir.
Anyways, thank you. So,
Thank you.
Hello Dilip, how are you?
Doing good, sir. Thank you.
Not me but you. Do you remember this slogan?
Can you please repeat it, sir?
Not me but you.
No, sir, I can't recall it.
This is the creed of NSS.
Okay, sir.
You have worked in NSS in your in your college days?
In my college days, definitely.
So what is the objective of NSS?
Sir, it's to do service to the society.
And when was it formed? And who was the person behind this whole movement?
Sir, I'm not aware of that, sir. I'm sorry.
Okay. Your DAF says that you have worked on mentoring of students as well?
Yes, I have. Sir, I have.
Okay. So can you tell us the steps of mentoring? If you have to mentor someone, so what are the 4 steps you're going to take?
Sir, in my opinion, the first step would be to identify the unique needs of the child. Every mentee or student or child is unique, and we'll have to identify their unique needs. And the second step would be to create a specific plan for them for 2 years or 3 years down the line. For example, I've been mentoring IIT JEE students. So for them, it's essentially a 2-year plan. Like in parallel to +1 and +2 studies, they'll be preparing for IIT JEE. So we'll have to prepare a plan. And the third and most important step would be to act as a guide for them alongside. Like for instance, weekly, I usually did it on a weekly basis. During the weekend, I will be contacting them. I'll be assessing their progress, and I'll be providing them a sort of timeline for the next week. So guide, and the last step would be to be a good role model to them. I mean,
Okay.
you can say a lot of things to them, but ultimately you have to show them how it's to be done. So
Don't you think building relationship should be the first step?
that's an important aspect of it.
That is the first step of mentoring actually. The confidence has to be there between both of mentee and mentor. Okay. Tell us, what is the difference between a mentor and a leader?
Sir, the power hierarchy would be the biggest difference there, I feel. A leader is someone who leads from the front, like he acts as a powerhouse of sorts, and he inspires his followers. On the other hand, a mentor sort of walks alongside and guides them. So he is more of a front-end philosopher than a leader, sir. So that would be the main difference, is what I feel.
Please read about mentorship. Fine.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What is your understanding of disruptive technology?
So disruptive technologies are essentially the technology which create radical changes, which sort of creates a quantum leaps in technology, sir. AI would be a good example of a disruptive technology which
Okay.
completely overwhelm the industrial processes.
Suppose you have to introduce disruptive technology, maybe 2 or 3, for e-waste management. So what are those technologies which you are going to use?
So technology is circular. We'll have to implement circular economy somehow. Like that would be the pillar stone of e-waste.
E-waste, yeah.
E-waste management. So trying to recover rare earth metals and precious minerals would be the first step in. Can be if we can design sufficient technology to do that. For instance, most of the e-waste right now, they have a good amount of rare earth minerals. So, and then we even have minute amount of precious metals like gold and silver. So if we can develop efficient technology to recover that, it can be a cost efficient way. It can pay for itself. So,
okay. Another one?
So then I can think of a management step where we can ensure like responsibility for the producers itself. Right now, the primary issue for the e-waste accumulating is that the producers are not held accountable sufficiently. So if we can digitize the entire supply chain, if we can ensure that the supply chain is maintained, I mean, once the product reaches the end of cycle, we have to identify the the producer and ensure that he takes care of the last.
Good. Suppose you are working in administration.
Yes, sir.
And there is a new policy on customer orientation, that we as an administration have to have a policy of customer orientation. Fine. So this is a change process. So how you are going to introduce this change? Other related activities, what are you going to do?
Sir, I think the first step would be to educate my own staff about what the changes are going to be, and the first step would be to enable them to get adapted to the process. And then of course we'll have to put a system in place so that it doesn't depend on any individuals. We'll have to put on proper flowcharts. We have to assign responsibility to specific positions rather than individuals. And once that all this back process is done, then we'll eventually reach out to customers and we'll try to make it as simple as possible for them. Even if the process is complicated, we can break it down. We can assign specific, we can break it down into simple steps that the customers can easily understand. And finally, I think some amount of incentivization can help a lot. For instance, taking the e-waste example earlier, if we can provide a small amount, I mean, if a person returns the mobile phone after it goes out of use, we can provide a small amount of money as rebate or something that will incentivize them for.
How about training and development?
Sir, in most cases, what I feel is that if we can put some sort of in-work training process in place, that can take care of. This is what I feel, sir.
Okay. If you come to know that you have issues on anger management, what are you going to do?
Sir, I think I will take external help. I don't think any person should be left to himself to deal with anger management. So I'll take expert help and I'll follow their instructions, sir. That's what I'll do.
Good. Thank you.
Dilip.
Yes, ma'am.
So if you are posted as DM of a district
Yes,
where sex ratio is very low in some remote district of UP or Bihar, and there people are not very keen on listening to you, so what will you do?
Ma'am, I think behavioral change is the ultimate solution to lower sex ratios. For instance, we had the Beti Bachao scheme, and if we look, I mean, it has not had definite results yet, but we can see that in the latest survey, the sex ratio, I mean, it was a small survey by NSO, but the sex ratio there was actually above 1000. So behavioral change should be the ultimate aim. So what I would say is, I will try to bring in influential personalities from the community itself. It can be the sarpanches of the community or the local MP or MLAs, and they can be made part of awareness drives. And another thing we can do is, we can try to give them incentives, as we have been declaring earlier. One of the primary reasons that people prefer the male children is that the girls are seen as a burden of sorts for them. So if we can ensure that their education is paid for at least partly by the state, if we can provide some sort of scheme where they can create savings in a convenient manner for their marriage, all these can accumulate in reducing the burden, ma'am. And thirdly, I think we can go along the measures of seeing girl child as a more positive thing. For instance, some 2 years earlier, PM Modi ji had actually initiated a selfie with daughter campaign. So similar campaign can actually lead to daughters being seen as assets of the family rather than burdens, ma'am. So these are some
But
of
isn't
the
it all symbolic?
Excuse me, ma'am?
Isn't it all symbolic? It's not the real change. So how can girls become assets, real assets, than liability?
Ma'am, in my opinion, that would require some amount of radical revamping of society. I think girls are seen as burdens partially because of the patriarchality and norms where women are essentially sent off to other families while male children stay behind and look after their parents. So if we can create if we can at least create awareness that girl children can also take care of their parents, if we can give them examples. For instance, in Kerala at least, there are many girl children who have gone abroad as nurses or such, and they have eventually led to their families climbing up the rungs of social ladder. So if we can provide examples like that, maybe that can bring about some change, ma'am.
Very well said. So suggest me 3 economic reforms which are drastically needed in India right now.
Ma'am, digitization is definitely needed, is what I feel, because we know that more than 90% of our economy is still in the shadows. It's the informal economy. So if we can somehow increase the formalization, at least to an extent, if we can create 30% formal economy, that can have effects in multifarious regions like tax collection or like GST revenues, and even in corporate, more reducing the unemployment. So digitization is definitely required, ma'am. And also we should make more use of the data that we have. Like if we go to the revenue department or if we go to the MCA, like they have created some reforms, but still a lot of data is still in pen and paper. So if we can digitize it and we can use proper.
First is digitization.
Ma'am, second would be data management, and third would be consumer awareness, ma'am. Essentially, I mean, we can do a lot of things at the back end, but ultimately the people have to come forward themselves. For instance, recently we had the tax amnesty schemes, both in direct as well as indirect taxes, and it actually showed considerable progress and results. So if we can drive home the message that the formalization of economy or getting into the formal economy is actually good for them in various ways, like providing tax credits for GST. That can be helpful.
Very well said. What is Turing test?
Ma'am, Turing test, it was devised by Alan Turing. So the ultimate aim is to distinguish a human being and a computer using a series of questions.
Okay, very good. How was Pegasus able to break the encryption? So we get a lot of messages that this social media or chatting service is encrypted, 124-bit encryption, and yet Pegasus could break it.
Ma'am, from what I understand, Pegasus did not technically break the encryption. So it was essentially designed by a state-of-the-art company, and they identified an exploit within the WhatsApp's algorithm, a zero-day exploit. So even the developers were not aware that that particular bug is existing. So they used that to gain backdoor entry into the phones of the users. So once you get into the phones of the users, encryption doesn't matter anymore. So I mean, we are essentially reading WhatsApp messages because the phone is decrypting the message and then showing it to us. So since they were able to get into the phones, they were able to bypass encryption, ma'am, rather than break it.
Very right. Name any 5 non-fiction books that you have read. Just the names.
Ma'am, I am currently reading Mossad by 2 Israeli journalists. Before that, I read Rafael Nadal's biography, and also Nudge by Richard Taylor, Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman and his fellow researchers, and India After Independence by Ramchandra Guha.
My last question to you, why is that India is not able to develop single mobile brand which can be said to be a big name in a mobile industry?
Ma'am, there were attempts in that direction like Carbon, but they didn't really take off well. I think the primary issue is that our cost of manufacture has been unable to compete with giants like China, like who were much earlier and like who have like larger economies of scale than us. And another factor is that the technology development we have been lagging behind a bit. For instance, to take the example of Samsung, which I have first-hand experience, they place their state-of-the-art research centers in Korea. I mean, they have a facility in India also, but there they mostly do software development, which does not require technological expertise. So unless we develop in-house technological expertise, we have to improve our own research and development budget. And till that happens, I think it would be very difficult to compete with companies like Samsung or Apple or other big shots now.
Thank you so much, Dilip.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, Dilip.
Yes, sir.
As connected to the last question, that you read non-fiction, right?
I do. Sir.
So why are you interested in non-fiction only?
Sir, I do read fiction too, but I feel that non-fiction can be helpful to me as a person to develop my personality. Specifically, since I am an engineer, for many years of my life, I have mostly been reading more technology-related works. So I thought I could broaden my horizons a bit more by reading upon other areas of knowledge.
Okay, right. Your mother has been, associated with management of education, yes, right? So, do you think that online education is the way forward to develop, comprehensively the personality of children in schools and universities?
Sir, online education has many benefits. For instance, it can take us out of this paradigm of 9 to 5 education. It can be round the clock. It can provide continuous monitoring of students. But what I feel is that it cannot completely replace offline education, specifically in the formative years. Because education is not just about learning academic content. It's also about socializing with students, creating common bonds and cultural values. So all this cannot be replaced completely by online education unless we move multiple decades forward, maybe.
Okay. What about the inclusivity of education in terms of online education?
So that's definitely another issue. I mean, I forgot about that earlier. In India specifically, there's a huge technological divide right now. I mean, there was this survey numbers that around 80% of our children, I mean, mostly from rural areas, do not still have a viable internet connection to gain access to the various online platforms that are made freely available for them. So that is also to be taken care of, sir.
Okay. Your father has served in police services, right?
Yes, sir.
So tell me something about, modernization of prisons.
So that's actually a central scheme. I mean, Kerala government had taken up in the last decade, but right now central government has also provided some overarching guidelines on it. So one of the first steps is to ensure that the under trial prisoners who have been staying there for a long period of time without any due process, that has to be addressed. And there has been this initiative that if they have served more than half of their sentences, they should be given bails on demand. And another aspect is that the prisons lag behind in various areas like digitization and in providing clean infrastructure and facilities. So there has been this drive to provide sufficient funds to each state, partly by the center and partly came up by the state governments themselves, to provide adequate facilities and also to focus more on reformative activities for the prisoners. For instance, they are teaching them entrepreneurial skills, some kind of manufacturing skills in food sector and as well as other industries. And sir, lastly, sir, there has also been this open prison scheme where promising prisoners have been sent to open prisons so that they can faster integrate with the society and learn the adequate proper skills for that, sir.
Okay. So recently, Sri Lanka is undergoing an economic crisis.
Yes, sir.
So can you please explain, especially in terms of reasons and causes for the same?
Yes, sir. Sir, right now, Sri Lanka is undergoing a grave debt crisis. They have defaulted on their various sovereign loans amounting to around $51 billion. And coming to causes, there are multiple causes. One is that because of the Easter bombings and later the protracted COVID crisis, tourism sector, which was one of the mainstays of the revenue generation in Sri Lanka, practically collapsed. And also the agricultural sector was thriving primarily because of the large amount of imports of fertilizers. But in the last year or so, they went on this ill-advised drive to shift it completely to organic overnight, and that led to drastic reduction in production of various agricultural sources. So, and also, sir, thirdly, there was this infrastructure drive to create infrastructure, especially in western Sri Lanka around Colombo and Matala regions. But the fact is that many of those loans were practically unsustainable, whether it were taken from the developmental banks or from the various banks in China. The infrastructure projects didn't really give the projected returns. For instance, Matala airport was supposed to be a rival to the Colombo airport, but eventually the actual footfall turned out to be much lower than the projected footfall. So that kind of ill-advised infrastructure investments also added to the debt burdens.
Over to sir.
Dilip.
Yes, sir.
La Liga, English Premier League, Bundesliga. Which one would you pick?
Sir, I am a fan of La Liga, sir. I would definitely pick La Liga.
And why is that?
Sir, I am very fond of their playing style. Each team has a definite signature football style. I am personally a fan of Barcelona and their tiki-taka style of build-up football. But Real Madrid...
But the tiki-taka is failing miserable now.
Sir, I wouldn't completely agree. I mean, Barcelona has been on a downfall, but since Xavi came as coach a few months ago, they have been on a path of resurgence. Like last month, they defeated Real Madrid by an impressive margin. So they are...
Tell me, as a football enthusiast, how in the world would anyone tolerate state-funded football clubs like PSG? Isn't it completely anti-competitive in every manner of form?
Sir, in case of PSG, I would partially agree, but perhaps in a developing country, maybe like India, some amount of state funding can be helpful. We know that we have a huge potential, like we have a large population. I mean, we have created multiple promising footballers, but we have not been able to sustain it. And even our good footballers, they haven't gotten sufficient avenues to explore their skills. Sir, so maybe in developing countries, some amount of state support can be helpful in the formative stages, sir.
Dilip, it is argued that the way in which the Civil Services Code of Conduct rules are drafted, and same applies to even Indian Administrative Service rules, it is designed, made to create civil servants who are psychophancy towards any authority or even obsequious behavior. So much so that they call it as servile. Look what happened in 2018. Not taking names, a state government issued a circular commanding civil servants to raise and get up whenever they meet MPs and MLAs. So is it correct to conclude that civil services is equal to obsequious behavior?
Sir, the examples you quoted are definitely over the top, and that should definitely be condemned. I agree there. But at the same...
Are the examples over the top or the situations itself are over the top?
The situations themselves, I'm sorry, the situations themselves are over the top and should definitely be condemned. But at the same time, I feel that the conduct rules are necessary for an organized bureaucracy like that of India. I mean, we have like the permanent executive...
And being servile is one such behavior.
Not definitely, sir. I mean, I feel that even within the conduct rules, the civil servants can stay true to their values of integrity. It would, I mean, there might be some consequences, but there have been a number of civil servants who are thriving within the system and who are doing remarkable work. But it's true that there are survivalists who are also thriving. So maybe an amount of checks and balances, maybe the various reforms that were proposed by Supreme Court in the TSR Subramaniam case can be a positive step in that regard, sir.
Very good. as a Forest Service official, if there is a palpable conflict between, let us say, Environmental Protection Act and 2013 Forest Rights Dwellers Act, which one would take precedence? And as a forest official, how would you view that situation?
So from what I understand, the Forest Dwellers Act has a non-obstante clause, which itself ensures that it should take precedence over forest laws when if and only when they come into conflict. And also, sir, the 2013 Act was essentially undoing a injustice that was done to the tribals. The colonial laws essentially saw the tribals as thieves and encroachers in their own territory, and that should have definitely been undone, sir. So I feel that law should definitely take precedence over the various forest
Excellent. Dilip, when was 10th schedule inserted in Indian Constitution?
Sir, the anti-defection law was introduced in 1985, sir.
1985. So is it correct to conclude that from 1950 right up till 1985, defection was constitutionally permissible?
Sir, in a technical sense, yes.
Not technical sense, no jargons. Was it constitutionally permissible? Binary, yes or no?
Yes, sir, it was constitutionally permissible.
Permissible. Okay, thank you, Dilip.
Okay, Dilip, staying with this forest thing, tell me what are according to you, the causes of the kind of Kerala floods we witnessed in recent times?
Sir, there are multiple causes. The one fact is that in both the years, the 2018 and 19, when we had large flooding, the monsoon rains were much above average. They were like multiple tens of centimeters above the long-term average. And another fact is that the dam management was found to be less than satisfactory, particularly because the situation was unprecedented, and traditionally the electricity production is also a big factor, and so the KSCB and similar authorities tried to maintain the dams at a high level. So the rules of procedure had to be redone after that to ensure that the flood management also takes proper prominence. And another factor is that, sir, in Kerala, the wetlands have traditionally led to mitigation of some amount of flood levels. But in the recent decades, development has led to some of these wetlands being encroached and the built-up area being increased manifold. That also reduced the seepage of water into the lower ground level, and that aggravated the flood level. The flood level started rising much more drastically than before. I would say these are the three main reasons, sir.
Okay, before I let you go, just tell me, what is your strategy to become acceptable in a community? For example, you become officer and you're reaching somewhere, and you're still struggling to get acceptability amongst the community. What is going to be your strategy?
Sir, I would say I would start with learning the unique features of the community and the cultural do's and don'ts of the community. And another factor is to try to communicate them in their own language. I mean, it's not just about the mother tongue, it's about their own conventions and traditions and respecting that. So establishing that we are not a threat to them and we are trying to help them can be helpful a lot in establishing a rapport with various communities. So that will be my first step, sir. And secondly, I feel that over the time, if I am doing my job right, and the people will see that I am doing well, and they will eventually accept me for one of them, is what I understand, sir.
Finally, nice talking to you. Your interview is over. You can go now.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Take a seat, Dilip.
Thank you, sir.
Dilip, generally, what are your scores there?
Sir, in my last interview, my score was 173.
173 was 2020.
2020, sir.
And you missed by how many marks?
10 marks.
10 marks for which service? Total selection?
The general cutoff.
General cutoff. Okay. And when you got this forest service, what was your score?
198, sir.
198 forest.
Yes, sir.
That's good. So, what's your take on today's performance of yours?
Sir, it could definitely have been better, especially in the early stages. I feel I was a bit clumsy and awkward. So.
Okay. And in terms of communication, is it your best, or you believe that there are areas you would like to work?
Sir, my answers could definitely have been more structured. Some answers more than others.
Right. These are the things actually we have noted. Not much of the difference. Your own analysis about yourself is more or less correct. There are few things I would like to mention. I mean, you're definitely a good candidate. You're a sitting All India Service Officer and so selected All India Service Officer. So obviously the board members will be really looking after you. Okay, it's more like a transfer from a service to other rather than actual selection. So they'll be very happy to have you if you actually push for this. And then coming to specifics, in general, your personality is good. Sitting posture, it's good, but at a few places, look at the video carefully. You're a smart person, you'll be able to look at. One, you're spreading a lot. And second, when you tilt from a member A to member B, you have this tendency of moving one leg awkwardly and becoming a very informal looking kind of a person sitting, right? It's only a matter of 30 minutes, right? So, I mean, look as formal as possible. I'm not saying become stiff bodied. That's not my intention to say. It should be relaxed, but at the same time, you should realize that it's a formal communication. So look at it carefully. Otherwise, your sitting posture was okay. Your voice level was definitely very good. Now you're clearly audible. You're in general, both the speed as well as at a few places, sometimes speed is little higher, but still voice clarity is there.
Okay, sir.
Flow is also definitely very good. That's your strength. Also, your strength is analysis. Whenever you are served with the facts or you have the facts, you are able to analyze these really well. On the suggestion front, one, obviously you must have realized, somebody must have already told you that your hand movement is too much, right?
Yes, sir.
So if you're in position to control it, fine, right? If you believe that it is absolutely impossible for me, then just clasp your hands. That is another way of doing it. Clasping the hand is not the ideal thing. We do not generally suggest it. But if the hand movement is too much, then this is one way of curbing it. You can consider that.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Similarly, there's another thing which many people must have told you and told you wrongly is about your eye contact. I mean, this is a school of thought thing. So, I mean, you have to listen to me and then decide on your own.
Yes,
You have this tendency of having this kind of a oscillating eye contact, trying to look at many people at the same time. I understand it's been suggested many a times, but see, you are a smart person. Please understand what is the most human way of interacting. It is looking at the person you're talking to.
Yes.
You can have a glance here and there, but ultimately the trust building thing is being held by the eye contact. If you're missing the eye contact, then you're losing trust.
Yes.
You may or may not get trust of the other person, but you'll be losing the trust of the person you're talking to. So my advice will be, look at the person you're talking to, maybe a glance here and there.
Okay, sir.
But then again, as I said, you have to take a call. Right now it looked very awkward.
Okay,
You're
sir.
talking to me and you're looking there. He may or may not be interested in looking at you,
Okay, sir.
but you're losing my trust unnecessarily. So you have to work on that.
Yes, sir.
Other things, very, very good. The only area you have to be careful about is two things. One, you're very forthcoming with every issue, on every issue. It's a dicey thing. It can work, but sometimes it can boomerang. So you have to take a call that
Okay, sir.
to what extent you want to be that forthcoming.
Okay, sir.
On the issue. Since you mentioned you have stuffed your deaf with many things, right? You mentioned NCC, NSS, you mentioned many other things. My advice will be that whatever time you have, please read about it,
Yes,
at
sir.
least the fundamentals about it. Other things, very, very good. In fact, I've given you such detailed feedback because to me, you're one of the best candidates. So you actually need to, make maximum out of it.
Thank you, sir.
One suggestion, sometimes your answers are long,
Yes, sir.
right? So you can work on that. Other things, all well. I'm sure you'll do very good.
Okay, sir.
All the best.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir.